What permits do you need to flip a house? Most investors think that permits are optional until the inspector shows up and shuts the job down. Do you want to know the fastest way to blow up your profits on a job? Skip the permits. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly why permits matter, what you can skip, and how to avoid costly delays. By the end, you'll know exactly which permits you need for a flip and how to navigate them without killing your timeline. When it comes to getting permits, your area will dictate exactly what you need. For instance, some towns have different code enforcement than certain cities that might be right next door to each other. It's important for you as a new investor or as an investor to know exactly what the town that you're working in needs. Now, if you're working in multiple towns and villages, you have to know the differences between them. Let me give you an example. Where we flip in upstate New York, we have a town called Rotterdam, New York, and for years they were very lenient on getting permits. You had to get permits for any major work, but it was any kind of just cosmetic, and that included installing new cabinets or installing new flooring and paint. No permits were required. However, one city over, literally one street in some areas of this community, you wound up being in the city of Schenectady. Now, a city, this particular city, was very strict. As a matter of fact, if you were going to alter a 1-by-1 square foot of sheetrock in that house, or cut it out to look to see if you had plumbing, you had to bring that entire room up to code. It's important to know that, because if you don't, they'll shut your job down. Ask me how I know that. In that particular case, we went into a room and thought, okay, we'll just do this room and we'll just paint it up, make it look good. And after the city inspector, somebody, by the way, had turned us in, because people do that on a regular basis. They're called Karens. They just like to tattle on everybody. So they saw a truck out there and they called code enforcement on us. They came in, saw that we were doing very little, but it exceeded the work that we were allowed for their city. So they shut our job down. Now, we had to go and plead ignorance and say, listen, we're sorry, we didn't know that, but it still shut our job down for over a month. So if you've ever followed any of our videos online, by the way, check them out if you don't know about that, holding costs will kill your profits on a job. So our job literally had to sit stagnant for a month, which probably cost over $2,000. The permits themselves are probably $500. So it would be much smarter for us just to get the permits out of the gates. And a little bit later in this video, I'm going to explain why it's important to actually have those code enforcement people on your side. So a general rule of thumb is that anything structural is going to require a permit. Now, again, in certain towns, sometimes you can do the work yourself or have the work done. It just has to be inspected and approved by a third-party inspector that then takes liability off of the town, because an inspector says, yes, this is done, it meets the requirements, and then the town will accept that and let you move on. However, some jurisdictions will require you to have a licensed plumber, a licensed electrician, or a licensed contractor to do the work, but other areas don't. So again, it's so important that you know what's required and what's not required in your particular area that you're working in. Make sure you understand those details before you dive in. A lot of times, cosmetic changes, so paint, flooring, sometimes kitchen cabinets or vanities in bathrooms, you're not required to get a permit. Again, it's important that you know what to do. Because remember, if you don't think it's required and it is required, you could get in trouble. Believe it or not, working with code enforcement can save you time later. I already talked about how they might shut your job down, but what you don't know or might not be thinking about is, think of code enforcement as someone else having your back, especially if you're a newer investor. Number one, you don't want to get a bad reputation with any town or village or jurisdiction in your area, because if you get a bad reputation or someone that tries to not get permits, they are going to make it really tough for you when you do have to get a permit. So make sure you stay on their good side. And they always have your back in a weird kind of way. On Amber's and my third flip, that's 1,200 flips ago, I remember that we hired a contractor because they were the cheapest we could find. They were so cheap, in fact, that they were doing things really incorrectly. And our inspector pulled up on the job site and looked and saw what they were doing and how they were trying to cut corners, and took Amber and I aside and said, I want you guys to understand something. That's not right. And that's not right. And this isn't going to fly, and they're going to get you in trouble. And so we knew out of the gates we had to get rid of that contractor and part ways with the contractor, but we were so new, we didn't know what we were looking for. We thought, okay, they must know what they're doing. They're contractors. Well, that doesn't mean they know what they're doing. So code enforcement legitimately had our back. And the more you lean on them and make them feel important in the job, well, the more they're going to help you with your project. There's also a trend that started a couple years ago, and that is now with all the people that are flipping houses out there, when you go to sell your house, the title company or the attorneys involved in that transaction, many times for the buyer, once they see work has been done, they're going to ask for the CO or the certificate of occupancy, or they're going to ask for the permits to make sure that they were signed off on so the work was done correctly. If you renovate a job and don't get permits and then tell them, well, I didn't get any permits for this, it looks like you're a shady flipper out of the gates and they may not want to buy your house. Here's a pro tip for you. When you're hiring your contractors, make sure you hire contractors that understand the local code and preferably already have relationships with code enforcement in the area that you're going to be working in. If you're worried about permits, that's a sign that you need clarity before you even buy the house. Go watch this next video, which is all about the crucial step that new investors always miss. The link is in the description below.